Shalom from the holy city of Tzfat in the Galilee of northern Israel. Today, the 23rd day of the month of Iyar, the 14th day of the month of May of the year 2023, advancing as we go through Iyar of this year of redemption 5783 towards the festival of Shavuot. Now, after Lag BaOmer, when we started the first part of the teaching from Rabbi Nachman that we are continuing to study today, on Lag BaOmer we're already 2/3 of the way to the time of the receiving the Torah. And now we come to the second part of our teaching of Rabbi Nachman's Likutei Moharan, part 1, teaching 13, going now from a little over the halfway point of the teaching from the Agadah, the tale of Rabba Baba Chana, brought in elsewhere in the Talmud, among many other tales of Rabba Baba Chana. And in this tale, Rabba Baba Chana relates about this amazing sea voyage which he had. So coming now to our text, Reb Nachman first of all quotes the teaching of Rabba Baba Chana as given in the Talmud. Said Rabba Baba Chana, those sailors that went down to sea, they told me that between one wave and another wave there are 300 parsei. A parsei is an ancient parasang, several good miles in distance, and 300 of them between each wave is quite a distance, and that the height of each of these waves on this very turbulent sea was itself 300 of these parsei. In other words, these enormous waves at sea that the sailors related to Rabba Baba Chana. Waves capable of producing absolutely devastating tsunamis, as we shall presently be seeing. And it was these that the sailors told to Rabba Baba Chana, with this great height between them and the great height of each wave. And he continues that one time, and now he's talking about his own journey, we were going on our journey and a wave lifted us up to the point that we were able to see the resting place, the lying place of one little star. And the size of this place, the resting place of the star, was an area that you'd need in order to scatter 40 barrels of mustard seed. Now, mustard seed is known to be one of the tiniest of all the seeds, and therefore 40 barrels would require an enormous area to sow with mustard seed. And Rabba Baba Chana is talking of days before our scientists have theories about the unimaginable distance of the stars from us. But here, whatever the scientists may say, this is what Rabba Baba Chana comes to tell us. And Rabba Baba Chana tells us, had the wave lifted us up any further, we'd have got burned from the burning vapor emitting from this star. Now, all of a sudden, it continues to relate, Rabba Baba Chana, there was one particular wave that lifted up her voice, calling out to another wave, her friend, the other wave. And the wave says to her, my friend, have you left anywhere in the world that you've not swept away? Have you left anywhere that you've not destroyed so far with your tsunami power? And if you've left anywhere, then let's go, you and I, together, and let's destroy it. Well, her friend says to her, wait a second, look at the great might of your master, God Almighty. For even the faintest a distance of a mere hairbreadth of sand, we, the sea waves, are not allowed to pass over. The sand is the shoreline of the sea, and God has decreed that the waves may not pass over the sand, as it states in the Torah, shall you not fear me, saith the Lord. So after this very graphic tale of Rabbi Bar Chana's voyage and what the sailors told him about these enormous waves with their catastrophic power to destroy. And now let us hear Reb Nachman's interpretation of this Agadah of Rabbi Bar Chana as he continues in his teaching in Likutei Moharan, part 1, teaching 13, which was said on the new year of the year 1803. And we shall come at the end to his interpretation of the shofar blowing. First of all, Reb Nachman explains to him, who are these sailors? He's talking about those who go down to sea. Well, these are symbolic of the sages of Israel, those who draw down the sea of the Torah, this mighty ocean of the Torah to this world. And what did they tell him? They told him that between one wave and another, there are these 300 parsi, these 300 parasangs. Now, 300 relates to the concept of the shin that we heard about in the earlier part of the teaching, where Reb Nachman was talking about the two sides of the capsule of the head of the tefillin. And on the left-hand side of the wearer of the tefillin, in other words, on somebody facing the person wearing tefillin, this would be on the right-hand side of the person facing the wearer, is a shin with 4 heads. And on the right-hand side of the wearer, the left-hand side of somebody facing, is the shin of 3 heads. The important point here being these 2 letters shin, which Reb Nachman is talking now. He's starting to talk about one of them, because the letter shin in Hebrew has the numerical value of 300, and the illusion of the great distance between the waves was shin 300. And the height of the waves, likewise, Reb Nachman continues explaining the Agadah of Rabbi Bar Chana. The height of the waves, likewise, was 300, referring to the second shin on the other side of the wearer of the tefillin. And so here in this section, we're hearing about these 2 letters shin on the tefillin of the sage of Israel, signifying, as we shall presently hear, 2 separate skills that the sage needs in order to bring down his Torah into the world. That is to say, these 2 300 parasang height waves and the distance between the waves allude to the 2 separate skills required by the sage. First of all, the skill of gathering together the souls who have come to attend and to hear, to receive the repairs of the tzaddik. And then a second skill is that of elevating all of those souls with all of their attendant desires, and to bring down the Torah to them in this world, as was explained in part 1 of this teaching. And these 2 separate skills of the Torah, of the tzaddik, who is the Chacham Ha'emet, here Reb Nachman identifies the 2 phrases. The tzaddik, the righteous sage, hacham ha'emet, the sage of truth. So these are alluded to in the two shins of the 300 parasangs each of the distance between the waves and the height of the wave. Now these waves here beautifully explains Reb Nachman, the waves are actually the souls. He learns this from the verse in Isaiah, which is explained in the Talmud Sanhedrin, where Isaiah the prophet calls on Israel. Here, the actual context of the verse is in the when the prophecy of the advance of Sennacherib with his forces to Nov, and on the way, the prophet starts saying, well, raise your voice, Basgalim. Basgalim was the name of a town on the way, where the prophet is saying, raise your voice quickly to pray, because Sennacherib is on his way to eat you up. But here, the sages take this as an address to all Israel, and the prophet is saying, raise your voice, daughter of the waves. Daughter of the waves, that is to say, who are these waves? These towering waves of water. This is alluding to Israel, who's the daughter of the fathers, the three fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So that is to say, if Israel collectively is all the great waves, so now in the Agada of Rabbi Baba Chana, the sailors told him that between one wave and another, there was these 300 parasangs. So says Reb Nachman explaining, these are the sages who are in fact between one wave and another. These sages are between them because they can join all them together. If the waves correspond to the souls, then the sages are between them all, providing a unified base so they can all join together. They attach all of the souls together, as in the verse which was already brought by Reb Nachman from Mishlei, Proverbs, in the main body of this teaching. The sage is the one who has the power to collect and to take up the souls of Israel, to rectify us. So as we see these 300 parasangs, the distance between the waves, these correspond to one of the skills of the sage who's between the waves. He has this skill of the shin, the skill on the head of the tefillin, of gathering the souls together. Next, the next element, the height of each wave was 300 parasangs. And now this alludes to the skill of the sage to elevate the souls, to lift them upwards. And that is the other shin, the other shin on the other side of the tefillin. Here we have already now the two shins, one of 3 heads, one of 4 heads, which, as we have seen, actually come in and join together in the way we see here, where the shin of 4 heads actually encloses the shin of 3 heads. And so there are 2 skills in the sage. And now, continuing with Reb Nachman's explaining the Agadah of Rabbi Baba Chana. One time, we were going on the journey. Now, symbolically, the orach, the journey, also in Hebrew, the same concept of derech alludes to the same concept of derech, that is zivug, union between male and female, between the partsufim. Now, this is called the orach, the journey, as King David writes in Psalm 139, that God, you know my way and my lying down, where the 2 concepts are brought together. The surface meaning would be my journey and where I lie down. But the elusive meaning is connecting the concept of the orach, the journey between man and woman, with the place where that is performed, the place of lying down. And in the context of the receiving of the Torah, the zivug is accomplished by the highest partsufim, Abba and Ima, joining together to bring down Shofar, bring down influence to Ze'er Anpin, the so-called small visage, the small face, that is the face that we can accept in our finite world, the face of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the giver of the Torah, and this brings about our ability in our status of Malchut to receive from Ze'er Anpin. So here the sages wanted to arouse this zivug, arouse this joining of earth with heaven, the souls of material people with God, the giver of divine spirit. Continues, the Leinen Galo, which could be read in two ways, we lifted the wave or the wave lifted us. Either way, because the sage can only bring down Torah according to the souls that are gathered with him. That is to say, we lifted up the souls gathered with us above, corresponding to the other verse quoted by Reb Nachman from Kohelet, Ir Giborim Olekchochem, that the sage went up to the city of the mighty. That is to say, Moses, the sage, went up to heaven, to the place of the angels, and despite their accusations was able to bring down the Torah. So Rabbi Baba Chana continued with his Agadah. The wave lifted them up so high, in other words, the spiritual elevation at this time of collective receiving of the Torah, with the sage in the role of Moshe, and the congregation, the followers of the sage in the role of Israel. They reached the resting place of one little star. Well, now here we are coming to very deep Kabbalah, where let us not be confused by the erotic imagery that we're talking about any actual physical eroticism. Here, says Rabbi Baba Chana elusively, we the sages were able to bring about this supreme zivug, this very high meeting between Abba and Ima, Chochmah and Bina, producing the synthesis of Torah coming down to the world, and the resting place of the star in Hebrew is alluding to the aspect of the zivig, the joining of the levels, as we saw from the verse in Psalms just above. And now at the time of the zivug, where the channels from above are flowing down, at that time the divine presence, which is receiving this influence from the infinite, the indwelling presence receiving this, at that time is called a small star. As the Holy Zohar writes in the portion of Balak, that his beloved, the beloved of God, comes like a tiny point. This is corresponding to the moon at her tiniest point, when she's practically hidden at the end of the month, and then she just appears at the beginning of the new month, a tiny point. And this is signifying also the beginning of the revelation of the Shekhinah, a tiny point. And this needs some help from above in order to allow the revelation that we want from the divine presence to come forth. And there are a very mysterious part of the Zohar, which I'll simply present as it stands in Reb Nachman's writings. Rabbi Baba Chana, to depict the size of the resting place of this star, he had explained it as being the size of a great plain that would be sufficiently large in order to sow 40 barrels of mustard seed. Well, now, before we connect the words of his Agadah, let's look at the words of the Zohar Reb Nachman immediately brings from Pinchas, speaking again about the need of the Shekhinah, pictured now as a slender impala deer, a very beautiful splendor, a slender Chaya. And this Chaya, as is known, when she is heavy with her young, and she's closed up, her womb is closed up, she cannot give birth, until along comes some kind of serpent and bites her precisely where protrudes her organ of procreation, and through this little bite it's opened up and some blood comes out, and the reward of the serpent is the serpent gets to drink the blood. Now, this very mysterious part of the Holy Zohar is depicting a concept of divine revelation to us through the steady building of the Shekhinah level by level that I cannot go into here at all. Simply to say here that through this this imagery of the impala deer giving birth to her young after so much difficulty before actually her womb is opened through the bite of the serpent, here is now connected by Reb Nachman to the Agadah of Rabbi Baba Chana in the following way. So here in the Agadah is alluded to in this mustard seed. The reason is because in Torah law, even an emission of the tiniest mustard seed size of blood from the woman's vagina is considered to render her impure, either as a nida, as a menstruant woman, or as a zava, as a woman who has an untimely flow, or in our case, as a yoledet, as a woman that is in the process of giving birth, and the first opening of the womb after the break of the waters, there'll be an emission of blood. So this is alluded to in the mustard seed in Rabbi Baba Chana's Agadah, alluding to the emission of blood. And I mentioned that it is swallowed by the serpent because the serpent is performing God's will. The serpent is God's emissary here to help out the struggling creature, Chaya, the Ayalto, and the serpent got to get its reward as well. So that's the blood, and then thereby opening up the womb, as Reb Nachman goes on to explain that the drop of blood coming out of her because of the bite of the serpent comes out from the place of her seed, the coming birth, and so that corresponds to Rashi's explanation on the page of the Gemara of Rabbi Baba Chana's Agadah. Rashi says that's the Beit Zera, in other words, allusively to the womb, as it were, of the Holy Shekhinah. And it's after that that the impala deer gives birth, and the result of this, the birth is not a physical birth. We're talking in these terms about the mystery of the interaction of levels of divine partzufim that bring about the revelation of the Torah that comes down through the sages having elevated the souls. Now this Torah comes via 40 days, and this alludes to the other angelic forces which are receiving their influence from the Shekhinah, pictured as the Ayala, as the deer, and the other 40 creatures are 10 on each side of the chariot that is carrying her, and all of this is mentioned there in the Zohar here, quoted from Pinchas, and this is why the Agadah of Rabbi Baba Chana alludes to these 40 barrels of the mustard seed to allude to the kelim, the 40 angels, 10 on each side, that are bringing down, receiving this influence, the 40 days in which the Torah is received. And continued Rabbi Baba Chana, if the wave that elevated us, namely this great ascent of all the souls together with the sage, if we'd gone up any further, we'd have got burned by the burning heat emitting from the kochav, from this moment of divine zivug. And what is this? What would have burned them had they got any further? He now goes into this great mystery in Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, where in chapter 8, verse 14, he says there is a hevel, a vapor, a vanity that occurs on the earth, which is that there are righteous people that encounter, there reaches them exactly what the wicked deserve, and vice versa. And we see that the righteous are apparently suffering and the wicked are apparently riding high and enjoying every success in this world on account of this vanity, this inexplicable, unanswerable mystery. Many people simply threw off the yoke of Torah. Look, if evil succeeds and good receives no reward, then for what purpose is there in playing by the rules? If the wicked break all the rules, why should we, the righteous, play by the rules? They see that the righteous have it bad, the wicked have it good. And says Rabbi Baba Chana, had we taken up the souls any further, there were the people who've got burned by this. That is to say, the Aramaic word in the Agadah, Makalinan, I have translated would have got burned, because that is the outer surface of the Agadah. The Aramaic word has the surface meaning of would have got burned. But we have to understand our sage's way of speaking in riddles and mysteries. And here Reb Nachman is darshaning that the Aramaic word in the Agadah has the connotation of kula, actually a leniency, that there was an alleviation from the intensity of this vapor that so confuses people. We could actually have eased the intensity and enable them to see that it's really not so very difficult. The answer to this question is cannot be fully understood in our world, but is obviously the central subject of the book of Job, and is one of the great perplexities, conundrums of our life to be discussed at some later stage. But here this would clearly be the goal, that we would bring people to understand that actually there is a way to truly justify the ways of God and feel good about it at the end, as Job did at the end of his prophecy. So now we're going to come presently to the very beautiful and amazing conclusion of this teaching. We began this last Tuesday here from the city of Tzfat, facing Mount Meron, the picture of which you can see behind me. And on Mount Meron they were celebrating last Tuesday Lag BaOmer, the Hilula, the celebration of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in a teaching at the beginning of the Idra Rabbah in the portion of Nassau in the book of Numbers, in the Idra Rabbah, introducing his very amazing drashot there, he says, before we get to that, let's make one thing plain. And Reb Nachman quotes this several times in the Likutei Moharan, notably in Torah Samach Aleph. Rabbi Shimon said, Ana b'chavivusa tal yamilso. As far as we're concerned, everything depends on chavivuso. Everybody knows the word chaviv, chabibi, my friend, and chavivusa is friendship, fellowship, love, mutual love and respect. And here this is alluded to in Rabbi Nachman's teaching about the remarkable ascent which the true sage achieves with the souls of Israel in his bringing them up to receive fresh Torah. And what he's doing is binding the souls together in such a way that they will cooperate with one another. In other words, to seek the destructiveness of people who are in competition with one another, and to reach a plane of cooperation in our true work in this world, which is to cleanse ourselves to be vessels for the service of God. So here, this is alluded to in Reb Nachman's teaching as he brings out the words of Rabbi Baba Chana. One wave raised her voice and said to the other, "My dear friend, have you left anything in the world that you've not swept away? And if so, let's go, you and me, and let's destroy it." And here obviously we have on the face of it, of Rabbi Baba Chana's Agada, this very terrifying image of a tsunami that could sweep away a whole civilization. And Reb Nachman characteristically is going to bring out a whole positive image in this, through this, that what the wave wants to destroy together with, in cooperation, is this world. She says one to the other, "Is there any thing in the world that you've not destroyed? Let's go and destroy it together." That is to say, explains Reb Nachman, afterwards, in the assembly of the souls with the true sage, when all of these souls come back out of the state of ibur, the state of conception and parturition which the sage brought them up to, where the Torah is developing in them, when he brings them back down through what they've learned and what they're now going to digest and follow, through this gathering together, there is added among all of them a great love one for the other. Now this is and should be the very foundation of the path of Baal Shem Tov, the mutual love of the Hasidim, the followers of the Tzaddik, for one another. That is the essence. Chassidut is not about putting a label, I'm this, I'm that. It's not about wearing a particular style. It is about showing true love for one's fellow Jew, and particularly for those who have devoted their lives to the service of God through the teachings of the Tzaddik whom they follow. So this is coming out of Rabbi Baba Chana's teaching as explained by Reb Nachman. They're all coming together and rising up with the righteous sage. There's added among them this mutual love one for the other. And then they now already arouse and stir and inspire one another and say to one another, they remind one another, look, my brother, maybe you've left some material trait in this world that you've not yet mastered. You're still under the thumb of some material lust or desire that you may not even be aware of. And so far you've not been able to overcome it. And if so, let me and you go and do it together. Let me help you. This is the essence of true love of our fellow, as taught by Baal Shem Tov and the two Hasidim. Let's help one another to overcome the negative traits within us that hold us back from God. And what did the other waves say? The waves being the Galim, the souls, one to the other, who have now come down. The other says back, hey, look, see the great might of your master. Well, we translated that in the Agadah as being one wave threatening to wipe out the world by overrunning the seashore. The other said that you're not allowed to. That's God's law, that you may go so far and no further. So now Reb Nachman changes the interpretation, the surface meaning of the words. He says the wave is saying to the other, come and see the great might of your master, our teacher, the sage, our rabbi. See how great is his power, because even through a hair's breadth of sand, one couldn't get over. Now, Rabbeinu Shmuel, the commentator on the Talmud, says that even by the breadth of the full breadth of a single hair, I was not able to get out from the sand. The word sand, hol, in Hebrew has the connotation of profane. So Reb Nachman is explaining what's going on between the words of the Talmud and the words of Rashbam, Rabbeinu Shmuel. Perush, the explanation, you, my fellow wave, you're asking me, maybe I left behind some bad trait in this world that I've not yet repaired. I want you to know, my dear fellow wave, I'm still so completely sunk down in all and every desire, worldly lust and bad trait, and I've not even yet succeeded in getting out of the sand, the profane, from the profane to the holy, even by a hair's breadth. And most certainly somebody who would be on such a level, such a person, how they're ever going to get out of the complete prison of their earthly material desires that they have built up over a lifetime, and now they cannot escape. This other follower says, how can I possibly get out of anything? And yet, go and see the great might of your master, that is to say, the might and power of the true Torah sage, whose power is so great that even my soul he succeeded in elevating together with all of the souls in the Ibur, in the collective period of gestation during which the Torah is received, those 40 days until it is revealed and manifest. So here we conclude with Reb Nachman's explanation of the Agadah of Rabbi Baba Hana, and the final stage of this teaching is bringing it all together in Reb Nachman's interpretation of the verse in the Psalms that speaks about the uniqueness of the people of Israel in receiving the Torah. The Psalm says, Asher ha'om yod'ei teruah. Happy is the people that knows the teruah, the shofar blast. Ba'or ponecho yelechun kol hayom. In the light of your face, O Lord, shall they go all the day. The greatness of the mitzvah of hearing the shofar blast on Rosh Hashanah and the giving of the Torah itself was accompanied by the blasts of the divine shofar heard at Sinai, and the people that were present and heard this blast, it went into the very roots of their souls to be there for all of the generations, all of the incarnations, and all of the scattered souls of Israel have this in their souls, the blast of the shofar. So here we come to Reb Nachman's interpretation of that verse in the Psalm because all of Reb Nachman's teachings of this kind are based upon one source in the oral Torah. That's what we just had, the Agadah of Rabbi Baba Chana from the Talmud, oral Torah. And now we come to the base in the written Torah, here in the scriptures in Book of Psalms. And so his interpretation of the verse, Ashrei Ha'am, happy is the people that know the shofar blast. Well, Ashrei Ha'am, Rav Nachman says, this indicates the providence that the people experience when they are close to the Torah. As we learned in the first part of the teaching, that the Torah itself is, as it were, the very eye of God. In the Torah, there are the levels of the letters of the Torah. There tagin, the crowns over the letters. There are the nekudot, the vowels with which the letters are put in together into words. And then there are the ta'amei hamikra, the musical notes, the notes and incantation to which the verses are sung, those four levels, tanta, and they correspond to the three colors of the eye and the black pupil of the eye. The letters, the black pupil, and the tagin, the crowns, the nekudot, the vowels, and the tamei hamikra, the cantillation marks. These are the three colors of the eye, the God of eye watching, so that as the closer we are to the Torah, the study of the Torah, the practice of the Torah, the bringing of the Torah into our very souls and veins in our consciousness, to all of this we are close to God's eye watching us. Happy is this people, alluded to the word ashrei, because the Hebrew word ashrei has the connotation of vision, as quoted in the earlier part of the teaching. Happy is the people that know the Teruah, know the blast. The Teruah is an allusion to Jacob, the shepherd of Israel. The Teruah is the spirit of tzedakah, which Rabbeinu spoke about at the very beginning, where he said that only through the breaking of our desire and lust for wealth can we have the future Torah of Mashiach revealed to us, and this is revealed to us through, we break the power of the lust for wealth through our charity tzedakah. So the Teruah, when we know the Teruah, we know the attribute of Jacob, the attribute of tzedakah, like the verse says in Psalms 99, justice and tzedakah, charity and kindness have you performed in Jacob. So happy are the people who know the charity aspect that enables us to come close to the future Torah and come close to understanding how we are under God's watchful eye. And the verse continues, the people, they go in the light of your face. Hashem alludes to all of the aspect of the havayot, the kindness that comes down from above through this process of our breaking the lust for wealth and of our thereby receiving Torah from above through the work of the tzaddik. So through this way the chasadim are brought down to us through the light of your face. The light of the face alludes to the sechel, the inner divine intelligence that radiates the face of man, and all of the people are going through this light. And with this, Reb Nachman concludes his presentation of this avenue of ascent, which can be summed up in the following points, which are the very essence of this teaching. It is through our giving of tzedakah, giving of our very selves and our soul powers, that breaks the idolatry of wealth. And it's then that the future Torah, the Torah of Mashiach, can be revealed. The Torah is, as it were, God's eye, just as God watches over and governs the world through the laws and principles revealed in his Torah. So when we are close to the Torah, we are under his, as it were, watchful gaze. And when we are close to the Torah, we're close to his providence. And all of this is a level of da'at, the divine understanding that permeates us as we ascend in our knowledge and understanding, and in our bringing into our souls and our awareness the Torah. And this in itself, as we saw in the main body of the Torah, this is the building of Torah. This is tantamount to the building of Torah. And we heard about the two skills of the sage through which he brings Torah to the world. And with this we conclude our presentation of Reb Nachman's teaching in Likutei Moharan, Torah 13 of the first part, Likutei Moharan part 1, Torah 13, the second part of our presentation of this teaching in our audio and video presentation.